That's a little bit. All right, almost there. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So, Beth and I were kind of trying to figure out the technology behind podcasting for like the past 20 minutes offline, juggling and doing a bunch of crazy things. So we got it figured out. We are live, we are on air. And this person, I'm going to name her the unforgettable boss, right? And it's like there's so many different layers to what we're going to be talking about and who she is, where she came from, and like what she does for a living today. So the floor is yours, Beth. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Oh, I so appreciate being here and I appreciate you. I love talking about visibility. I know it sounds like not a sexy word. Media, visibility, getting out there and really showing up as yourself, because I have so much fun doing my job because it's about expressing myself. It's about letting other people express themselves and find a place for your message. I always say to my private clients, I'm like, what is that message deep down in your gut that you dream about when you can't sleep, but you've never told anybody? That's what I work on. That's what I get people to get out of their comfort zone and really be able to make that impact that everyone talks about, but not a lot of people do. I actually help people make that impact that they want to make.
It's definitely interesting, right? So, I mean, with that, I like to time travel back when I'm doing these interviews. So
Okay.
for you, there was a particular post, I don't remember if it was on your Instagram or your Facebook post, and you were talking about being in second grade and having to, walk into the classroom, and you were trying to figure things out because it was a school that you just switched to. It was a private school, new kid, you came in the middle of the year. So I want to kind of talk about that because it seems like you tap into that and you tap into all those different levels of different schools that you went to, and then you're regurgitating and teaching people how to utilize that time and space when they're in it.
I really appreciate the back research. I really do. I want to acknowledge you for that. I was moved around from school to school as a kid, from camp to camp. And I always thought that was the best part of growing up, because I got to reinvent myself all the time, but I just had to teach myself to show up as myself, because we all know how hard it is to walk into, let's say, like a networking room and just start talking to people. By me having to like be the new girl over and over and over again, I learned that skill, and I'm able to teach other people it too. Because I think that one of the things that I got from doing that was like really know who I was, really understand how other people wanted to see me and how I wanted them to see me. Because when you come into second grade in the middle of the year, can you imagine? It's really tough. I also switched schools my junior year of high school. I was playing around and not doing well in school. So my parents were like, you're out. Let's go to a private school and work harder and cry a lot. But I feel like it taught me to be just show up as I was, because if I didn't, it was exhausting. And I knew that as an 8-year-old. I knew you don't understand how to like put on airs as a little kid, as a little girl. I didn't know how to do that. So I just was myself. And I think the reflection that I got from other people helped me to keep going and to keep doing it.
So, I mean, obviously there's a duality to you, right? I mean, obviously on one side, it's media, love PR, love to kind of convert things and to get the representation of what you're looking for to get the best return. But then there's a foodie side to you, right? There's another side that some people may or may not even know about you. So I want you to kind of talk about like Blue Barn Kitchen, like where did that come from, and how does that kind of lead into you being like a media personality?
Okay, so I was in TV production back in the day. One of my first positions was working at The Tonight Show, and then I went off to work for MTV. I did a lot of like Teach for America commercials. I did worked on lots of movies and castings, and I worked in all different facets, but then I wanted kids. So I was home for the first like 5-6 years of my kids' lives. I was so lucky to get to do that. And then when they went to school, I'm not like a tennis girl or like, let's go for lunch kind of lady. Like I was like, okay, my parents are entrepreneurs. What am I going to do to make some money for my family? And I just started teaching people how to cook in my kitchen, like literally teaching women how to make like roast chicken and sauteed spinach and potatoes. Like, because I always knew how to cook, and women my age at that point really didn't know how to cook. And it was before we had all these, you could get everything delivered. There was no Uber Eats at that time. But through that, I really leaned into feeding people food that wasn't fussy, that it was really about simple. It was about effortless. I have 20 minutes. I don't have an hour to make dinner. I only have 20 minutes. But what I learned as my business going online, I won't say the year. No, it was 2007. Yeah, it was around 2007. So online was just really starting. I had started like a mommy blog before that, but I really dove into what it was like to be a digital entrepreneur and bring my recipes to Facebook, because that's really was the only thing that was available at that time. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I started photographing my food and became a food blogger, not just teaching my local neighborhood people how to cook, but now I was teaching women all over the world how to cook. I was lucky enough to do some collaborations where I would literally like post my shopping list and go to Trader Joe's and make dinner as I talked to the audience. And there was this amazing woman, I can't remember her name, but her site is Domestic Superhero. She's still out there. And she asked me to come make my food on her Facebook group. And there were like 70,000 people watching, 30,000 people watching each one. And I was like, you could have that many people watch you on Facebook? You know, it was before the cognitive part of it. So I rolled that really into being a food blogger and covering lots of brands until one day the phone rang and it was the Dr. Oz producer. And he was like, hey, I saw your stuff on Facebook. Would you be interested in being on the TV show? He literally asked me that. And I was like, sure. On the inside, I'm like, yes, oh my God. But I also knew from my TV production background that this could be the beginning of an opportunity, not the end of an opportunity. So the conversations I had with him when I was on set, telling them, hey, I used to be in production also, so you don't have to worry about me freezing on set. And I know what it means to be on my mark. And I know what it means to say, to recite a script. So I unfortunately became a Dr. Oz blogger for the next couple of years. I called the guy who was the head of the social media department and said, hey, I want to work with you guys to put the recipes on that we're working. And he was like, sure, send me your recipes every week. I'll post them. I didn't go through the producer, so I learned by I think watching my parents be entrepreneurs, how to ask for what I want and create the system to get what I want. And then I parlayed the Dr. Oz into, I was on the Chew and I was on lots of other national shows. And then I had an idea one day. Literally, I had a Cinco de Mayo party and my husband he had taken limes and he made Jello shots like in the lime. Like that's the kind of foodie people that we are. We love food. And I had made some cocktails that were made with whole fruits and vegetables. So it was, lemon juice, lime juice. I think I made one with sage and grapefruit juice. And I literally, like, an idea came over me. I was like, I need to write a cookbook. Not, I think I could write a cookbook. I was like, I'm going to write a cookbook. And the cookbook came out 3 years later. We got a great deal with Norton, which is a great publisher. We had gotten a book agent who loved the idea. And I just enrolled the people around me, my co-author, in this idea. And people along the way told me no. My uncle said to me, you're not a big drinker. Why are you making a cocktail book? And other people were like, you don't know how to make cocktails. I was like, everyone can make cocktails. That's the whole premise of the book. The book has been in several printings. We were in everything from Oprah to ToryBurch.com and Wendy Williams and Dr. Oz and all the stuff. And I realized through doing the PR for my own product, how much I love the media side of the business that we're in, this digital side that we're in. And I kind of was done talking to women about eating broccoli and not chocolate bars. Just kind of over it. So I parlayed the book into doing national TV spots, working with great brands, and through that, really helping other women and men to do the same for their business, to do the same, meaning showing up online, showing up on TV, getting to be on CNN or Oprah or, any entrepreneur, Forbes, any of the big ones that everyone talks about, to be able to strategically place them in these places, but with a mind to how they're going to use it for their business. Because the biggest mistake that I made was when I was in the Dr. Oz show, I had gotten my website ready. I had hired somebody to help me with it. I had a new lead magnet and I put it all together. And then I hit pause instead of publish. And I didn't realize I did that till 3 days later. And I lost out on thousands of people who came to my website because they saw me on TV. So I was like, this can't happen again to me. This can't happen again to anybody that I know. So I really started my business from that pain. from talking to other women that were like, I was on the Today Show, but nothing happened. What do you mean nothing happened? What did you do? They're like, well, I didn't do anything. That doesn't work. You have to do stuff to make this actually work. And I've been doing this for the last 5 years. And I love it. I love being able to help women and men see who they are, see what their message actually is, and then show up in a way that they can be heard.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, like, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. There's such a duality to you, and that's why I kind of gave you like the nickname that I gave you, right? Being unforgettable, because again, like what we're going to talk about today, for the food listeners, right? And then obviously to the business listeners, I would think both people need to take notes, because we're going to talk about some things that strategy wise that got you to where you are. So one of the things that in looking into the cover of your book, right? You had this nickname in the foreword. It was called the Tipsy Fairy Godmother. So I want to kind of like talk about like the branding from that. Like how did you come up with that branding, and how does that branding then lead into what you're doing and where you are right now?
It came out of margaritas and conversations. It's really where it came out of. My co-writer and I remember sitting on the porch. I was like, how are we going to position ourselves so that women like us can hear us? Because at that time, there were a lot of other cocktail books, but they were fussy cocktail books. So we really wanted it to be suburban moms, 2 little kids, but getting to the point in their life that they could go out on a Thursday night and not have to worry about it. Their husband could take care of the kids, or their partner could take care of the kids, and it wasn't a big deal. I don't remember exactly how we came up with that term, but we banged back and forth a couple of things. I'm sure my co-writer, Tara Rossioli, who's the founder of Highway to Well, she probably came up with it. And it just kind of fit our personalities. Like I'm a lot of like flannel and sparkle, and she's, and she's like the opposite of me. And we just both knew that if we wanted somebody to help us kind of up level our cocktail game, up level our backyard party game, it was going to be a fairy godmother. And the tipsy one is because we're a lot of fun at a party.
So like, let's just keep talking about, I mean, I love the fact that we're unfolding these onions and we're peeling back the layers. So we're still on this journey of history of who you are, right? So I definitely want to talk about the Jay Leno experience, right? I mean, you were on the Jay Leno show, you were part of the audience, and then you had an opportunity when he came down, he was cracking jokes on you guys, you went up on the stage and you talked to him, and he asked you a question about working for him, and you was like, well, when's my interview, right? So I want you to kind of talk about, like, first of all, having the kahunas to even say that, and then actually showing up the next day for the interview. Well,
I'm from Jersey, right? So So people ask me that all the time. Honestly, they do. They're like, how do you get that much confidence? And it's like, I don't think it's confidence. I think I just grew up and surrounded by people who ask for what they want. My dad's been an entrepreneur my whole life. So my mom, they have several businesses. And I literally learned how to be a business owner or an entrepreneur by sitting in his car in the 80s and 90s and listening to him enrolling people in what they wanted to do. That's the one he taught me. It's like, you can tell people all day long what your idea is and what you want to do, but until you enroll them in your idea, you're never going to get them on board. So that's kind of, I think I took that subconsciously. And when Jay asked me, like, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I'm going to work for you. He did. He was like, oh, like he took it back a second. But that impressed him enough to give me an interview. And then thankfully I got to work there right after that for that summer. And really be a part of his team. And he knew I had guts. He knew I was brave. And that's one of the things I talk about a lot with my clients is if you wake up and feel frightened, which I do, terrified, what we do is scary. Close your eyes and say, okay, I'm going to be brave till 11:30 today. And then I'm going to crawl back in my bed and hide. But I've never had anyone come back to me and say that they crawled back in bed at 11:30. You're brave for the rest of the day. But I really lean into asking for what you want and enrolling the people around you, which means telling you. That's one of the ways that I actually got in the Drew Barrymore Show. Which is a hell of a segue. I mean, it was the next thing I wanted to talk about with the Drew Show. I mean, you're on the show, you're sitting in the audience, and they're just like, hey, we're just gonna try some random insects. And not only did you try a random insect, but you dipped the bad boy in barbecue sauce as well. So I want you to kind of like talk about obviously the adventure of being a foodie, but at the same time leveraging the media all together in one sitting is crazy. Yeah, well, I leveraged relationships for that one. I'd gone to the Tamron Hall show with a friend of mine. Her friend was a producer there, and then of course, he became my friend. And I have a whole system. I call it the fame formula of how you follow up and how you make friends with people in the media. And I just kept telling him, one day I want to be on Drew Barrymore Show. One day I'm gonna be like. everybody that would listen, I would tell them. Anybody that was in New York media, I would make sure I would say it to them. Like, oh, what are you working on? I'm going to be on the Drew Barrymore Show one day. So he literally called me one day and said, you want to be on the show? And I said, yes. He goes, will you eat bugs? And I said, yes. I didn't care what it was, because what I have now is video of Drew Barrymore saying, and our next special guest is Beth Nydick. Doesn't really matter what I did on the show. And I use that credibility as proof of concept, meaning proof of like that my systems work and how I do it works and my clients get somewhere, because I can show you that it works, that having those relationships and the willingness to say yes, no matter what it is. Because I could have said, well, it's not making cocktails with her. Why do I want to be on the show? No, when I was there, who did I make friends with? Her assistant, the producer on the floor producer, the audience producer, so that when things come up around cocktails, they would call me and then I could be on the show making cocktails. Unfortunately for me, she only really does celebrity stuff now. So until I'm celebrity, I'll have to wait. But you also never know.
Yeah. And I think it kind of goes to a statement that you made on Facebook. It was one of these quotes, and it was, I think it was your quote. And you said, when you stand for something, you stand out. And I want to know, is that kind of like with marketing, if you niche down and the farther down the hole you niche down, the more you stand out? Like what would your like actual definition and meaning by that statement?
I think for me, that's more of like where your passion and your expertise is. So when I stand for your possibility of creating your own success, that's the underlining my whole business. So it's not my tagline. You probably don't see me saying that often, but I do use the word possibilities often in my marketing and when I speak on stages and stuff. But I really believe that anything is possible and you can create anything. So I'm standing for that. So if that hits you in the right way, if possibility resonates you in the right way, and you want somebody that's going to not squash your dreams, but tell you your dreams aren't big enough and help you get to those bigger dreams, then I'm your girl. That's the way that I do it. You know, if you it's standing for something, niching down in your marketing and using keywords. So if I'm putting an ad out and I'm saying, hey, have you earned media and you make 10K a month and you're looking to be on national TV, you're going to self-identify and then hopefully also come see me.
So, I mean, I think you're a great example of using catchphrases or small little tidbits like that to kind of be associated to you. And another one that you did was, media is about making someone feel something. So again, based upon what you're doing, I want you to kind of talk about like the emotional side of what you're doing and how does that work?
I'm a Pisces and I'm very emotional. I'm a crier, but not a big crier, but I'm an empath. So I like to feel things. And I know that when you're in media, that's you. And I make this distinction. Marketing is about sales and brand awareness. Media is about your guts. Like, do you have the guts to show up on a podcast and talk like this? Do you have the guts to be on national TV and make a joke to Drew Barrymore or the Dr. Oz and make them laugh on TV? Do you have the guts to show up as yourself? Is really what that's about. But I feel like when you're on, say you're on Good Morning America, and you and I are on Good Morning America, we're talking about the same thing. And if, as a viewer, I walk away and remember your name and not my name, you made me feel more than I made you feel. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like when you're watching TV, start thinking about TV, podcasts, anything else, even us talking today. Am I making you feel anything listening to this podcast or watching this podcast? Because if I make you feel something, that's probably going to motivate you to maybe like me on Instagram. And if it does, go like me on Instagram right now. But it's going to motivate you to do things. I always say you're going to be inspired, motivated, or educated. Motivated and inspired is the feeling words, because then you remember the person. Then it's like, hey, mom, I was listening to this podcast and X, or I watched this TV show and X, because it's not about sales. It's about the longevity of your brand being in somebody's heart. Because yes, I need to resonate with you for you to hire me. Yes, you need to like me. But if I can make you feel safe, make you feel seen, and make you feel heard, I get to do that for you, then you'll be my customer for life. I was actually talking on a podcast the other day, and I said, what I actually do is make space for people to see themselves. And I have a safe space for them to see themselves in and then develop personally within that container. And I think anyone who's a coach or consultant would agree with me. That's actually what we do. The strategy and all the marketing and all that stuff is behind it. but you need to be able to step into that if you really want to be successful in what we do, because like I said, what we do is hard.
So I'm gonna flip that back on you, right? So you're looking at the mirror, and I want you to kind of take exactly what you said and do it for yourself, but I want you to do it in just using 3 to 5 words to define
Okay.
who you are.
Who I am?
Yeah, who you are, and just 3 to 5 words.
I would say I'm a mom that doesn't take S.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
who I am at the core. I'm a mom at the core. And I don't take, and I'm from Jersey, so I don't take anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, anybody from up north, we don't deal with shit well.
We don't do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm happy you brought up you being as a mom. I mean, obviously, like you're very like actionable as an individual, right? Like you're high intensity as well too. So, like, what is it like for your kids to knowing that their mom is going to potentially be on TV on a random Tuesday or on a podcast on a Wednesday? Like, how do they deal with that?
It's normal to them. You know, I've been doing it most of their whole lives. Like, how about the 6 months they came home from elementary school and I was drunk because I was testing cocktails.
Mm.
You know, I was like, do not tell your teachers that I'm drunk because something might, take me away from you. No, they were older by then. It's normal for them, but I have to tell you this. What they tell me is that it's influenced who they are.
Mm.
My older one is in Olympic weightlifting. And he has said to me before, when I get thinking about how I'm going to create my life and how I'm going to create the success that I want in my own life, I remember what you did in our old living room.
Mm.
Like that's an amazing reflection. My younger one, who's 19, he said to me, I've always listened to you talking to your clients. I was like, what do you mean you've listened? You sat outside my office and listened? He would play like his VR right outside my door and listen because he was curious on how I was communicating with them. So I would say to young moms who have younger kids, they're watching, they're at least listening, and they're learning. So model how you want them to show up in the world for them now. So in 15 years from now, when my kids are in college, when they go to college, they see the difference between the level that they're at and the level that other people are at. Because if you're in this business and you don't develop personally, you're not going to be successful. And as you develop, your family develops, your kids develop. I see what they're able to create. My younger one has a podcast. He's had it for about a year and a half. He loves it. He brings on great guys in finance. My older one has had amazing internships because he asked for them. Mm-hmm. He 2 years ago, he transferred to Rutgers. He set up meetings with all the strength coaches on campus. And within the first week, one of the coaches said, would you be interested in an internship? And he interned for them, and hopefully he's going to intern them again. But all he did was ask for what he wanted. He asked for informational interviews to try to create relationships. I didn't tell him how to do that. He gleaned it from having a mom who's an entrepreneur. So I want to give anybody out there that's an entrepreneur parent, really think about how you're showing up in front of your kids so that then when they're older, they can create what they want out of your life. But it also goes back to you can create the possibility of success in your life.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, obviously, this question is kind of going back to who you are as an individual, and there's duality to that, right? Mm-hmm. You're in front of the camera, you deal with that pretty well. You've done it for years upon years, but at some times, if you're in front of the camera, you need to have some of your isolation, your me time, right? So I wanted to kind of talk about your walks with Spike and how has that influenced to like you coming up with these great ideas and influencing what you're going to do next.
I interviewed on my podcast, which is now not currently new episodes. I haven't done it since 2001. And I could see him. I can't remember his name. He's a restaurateur from LA. I asked him, I said, where do you find your success? And he said, taking quiet walks. And ever since he told me that, Spike's getting older now. But Spike and I take quiet walks, no phone, no AirPods, no conversation. It's really my thinking time. Mm-hmm. So that I can come up with my next offer or what I want to do next. Because when I'm sitting at my desk, I don't have time to sit and think. So when I can go out and be in nature and I like to exercise with him. Well, now that he's old, I can't do that as much anymore, but it really gives me the space to think things out, to really check in with my gut and be like, is this the right collaboration? Is this the right direction? Is this the right message that I want to go? Because I'm developing my signature foundations to my business called the FAME formula. and how I'm presenting that to the world and how I'm getting it out there and what it's all about has all been created during walks with Spike. When I get home, I furiously write it down or I voice memo it as soon as I get home. So I remember all of it. But to be completely transparent, my son just left for his walk because he does the same. My older guy, he does the same thing. He doesn't take his phone, no AirPods. It's time for them to just think. And that's not something I told him to do, but that's an example that I gave to him. And the other side of that, which I definitely want to say, is when you tell your kids what's actually going on in your life, they grow from it. When I've made lots of money, I told them how much. When I've lost lots of money, I told them how much. When I hire the right coach, when I hire the wrong coach, so that they can learn as well, and to see what they're creating for their own brands, because that's the direction they're going in. But I think that quiet time is really the key that most entrepreneurs don't take. They take about me time. Like going to get a massage and my nails done is not going to give me the time to think. I need to actually be quiet to think.
So, I mean, part of that representation of that quiet time and obviously walking with your dog, are you naming any of your like products or any of your drinks on like the dog? And I'm asking you really about like the Greyhound basil cocktail. Is that kind of is that a representation of your dog, or was that just something that you came up with?
I'm telling you, I'm a lightweight. Like I'm good for like a drink and a half. So most of that stuff was created slightly inebriated, which I think is actually a good thing because it let us be more creative. We weren't drunk, but I was definitely happy. And it gave us the room to be silly and to make it a Greyhound and to really be outlandish. The publishers took a lot of that really outlandish stuff out because it's a mainstream book. But when we were naming the cocktails and Tara wrote a lot of the forwards, through conversations we would just have just to kind of like brainstorm and talk and see what came out, and really all with that ideal client in mind, we were the ideal clients. We were the women that we were talking to. So we were able to do that. Some of them came out of when I was a bartender in college, and some of the cocktails in the book are things that I made in school and I had named a long time ago. I like the Day Drinker, which is one of my favorites, which is the sage and grapefruit and lemon one, sage grapefruit, lemon gin. And then she had her own cocktails that she had made for herself. It was a true collaboration. But I want to make a quick point about the collaboration. I didn't know her before I pitched her my idea. I knew for this book, and I know myself well enough that I need somebody to do it with me. I'm not going to get it done on my own. I know I need somebody to collaborate with and be creative with, because creative by myself isn't always the best. I had met her at an event. I was like, hey, can we have lunch? She thought I was going to pitch to her, like, let's do like a smoothie contest together. And I was like, I have a book idea. 3 hours later, she was in, but I had sat down with 10 other people before I met her that I knew, like friends of mine, and pitched them the idea. I knew Tara was the one because she was in action the same way that I get into action. She called me the next day. Let's get this started. What do you want to do? And from there, it was off to the races. And she had connections that I didn't have, and I had things that she didn't have. It was a really true collaboration with somebody I didn't know.
So what I get from that, I mean, obviously, I think one of your taglines or one of your hooks is unlock your true potential. And it's not necessarily unlocking your true potential through being tipsy. It's about being around people that take as much action that you take. And I want you to kind of talk about that. Like, you wouldn't be where you are if you weren't surrounding yourself with action takers. Is that not a true statement? It's
a very true statement. And it might not be a great part of my personality, to be completely honest. Like some people might not like me for that. But I do like a certain type of person. I like a person who's doesn't have a facade, that is really honest, that is really themselves, and that can see who they are. I'll tell a quick story. I might look bad. I don't care. I went to an event locally, and the woman that was running it sat down, and her introduction was, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. Well, I'm kind of this and I'm kind of that, and I do a little bit of this." I was out. As soon as she could not start the conversation with a professional, "This is what I do. This is what I'm about. Thank you for coming out, spending your time with me for the next 2 hours." I was done already. So I do prefer somebody who is able to show up as themselves because I just don't have the time and room for somebody who can't. I recently met somebody in the first half hour. I was like, oh my God, she's amazing. I made a new friend. But then it kind of fell apart because the conversation was all about what she couldn't do and who told her she couldn't do it and why she couldn't do it. And I find myself coaching those people. And if I find myself coaching you, I shouldn't be friends with you. We can be friendly, but if you're not going to be, in my inner circle, because that doesn't help me move forward. We all have days like that versus personalities like that. I can have call you up and be like, I am having a bad day and I can't do this and this, of course. But if that's who your personality is, I just don't appreciate it. It's just not my kind of thing. And if you're that kind of person, I'm not if you're that type of client and I meet with you and I see that, I know that I'm not going to be able to help you. I feel like I need people who are at a certain point in their life and a certain point of their personal development so that I can get them over the finish line. And if you're in my inner circle, so you and I can get over the finish line together. That does that resonate with you?
It definitely resonated. And I think it kind of goes up to where we were kind of raised. Being a Northerner, we kind of have, to be frank, that cutthroat personality and mentality to where we don't want to deal with bullshit. We want things to be straightforward. And we again, you already know how we feel when we feel it. There's no behind the scenes playing chess. The chess pieces is being thrown at you at that moment, right? So that's just who we are as individuals. So I think that kind of leads me down the path of your podcast. And you're talking about behind the spotlight. In reality, I think you're delivering the definition of what behind the spotlight really looks like. People behind the camera or behind studios and producers and directors don't have time for bullshit. So I want you to kind of talk about your podcast and who's the real target demographic and what kind of content do you deliver?
I really love doing the podcast, and it's going to come out. Actually, we're going to re-release it in October. It's about understanding what it's like to be successful in our business, what it's like to actually show up on a set and do a segment for a national TV show, what it's like to be an anchor. I really wanted people to understand the business side of visibility, because if you don't understand it, it looks all shiny and you can't get, and it's very far away. You can't get into it. You don't know how to break into it. Because the questions I would ask my audience is what's holding you back? I don't know how to say my message. I don't know who to say it to. I don't know how to show up on camera. I don't know. So I wanted to bring people to fill in those holes. One of my very good friends, Carrie Barrett, was a new NBC New York anchor. And she really talked about what it was like to want to be an anchor and how she had to work in, small markets all over America and move every 6 months. I don't think people outside the business understand what the business looks like. I had a friend of mine, the guy who helped me with the Drew Barrymore Show. Unfortunately, he's not there anymore, but he came on too, John Aronoff, and he was talking about what it's like to really be a producer and and then I got to share stories of looking for chocolate chip cookies for the producer of the Tonight Show because he wanted them when I was 19. That's the kind of stuff I really wanted to show people. And when it comes out again, it's going to be the same. It's going to be a lot of that, a lot of what it's like to be a marketing executive, what it's like to really run an 8-figure business, an 8-figure marketing campaign, so that there isn't question about if you can do it, because if you put your mind to it, you can do it. It's how you're going to get it done.
So, coming off of the topic of how, right? I want you to kind of still stay on this time travel thing. And I want the opportunity for you to go back in time and talk to a younger version of yourself and give yourself hey, I've done it. I've been there. I know where you are. But ideally, if you make this one change and you do this, you could be way more successful a lot faster. When would you go back to, and what would you say to yourself?
I would go back to my early days of Blue Barn Kitchen, which the first iteration of Blue Barn Kitchen was called Blueprint for Health and Wellness, the longest URL in history. And honestly, I would tell myself to get a coach. Is what I would tell myself. I remember talking to a coach. Her name's Jen Scalia. She's still out there. She's still amazing. And she had offered me, I don't remember how long it was, but it was $1,500. And I didn't have an extra, what I thought was extra $1,500 back then. If I had hired her, I know I would be at a different place in my business. I just know I would. I know if I had leaned into and taken a chance on myself. And I know a lot of people say that in their marketing, take a chance, you can do it. I'm not talking about putting on a PayPal credit card. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm about actually taking a chance on what you can create. And it's something I'm doing currently. I have a new coach that is very expensive, but I have faith in her ability to do what she's an expert in what she does. But I also have faith in my ability to show up for it and do all the scary things.
So, I mean, let's just keep compounding on this conversation. I mean, obviously, all the things that we're talking about is surrounded. You have media, you have food, you have the bursting personality to kind of be in front of the camera. So ideally, if you're dealing with someone that's in digital media and they want to be in front of the camera, but they don't have your energy level, how do you usually deal with that?
It's a lot of exercise. It's a lot of sitting on a Zoom call and drilling questions and being bigger. And I think it's about the reflection, because everyone thinks like when the camera goes on, I get bigger. I know I do, but I've also been doing it for a long time. And a lot of people's bigger is this much bigger, right? Where we need this much bigger. So working with somebody, it could be me, it could be you, it could be just be a friend, but working with somebody to give you those reflections and be like, you need to be bigger. You need to smile more. You need to know what you're saying, because what most people don't do is actually practice the questions they're going to be answered on, or they're going to be asked on the show. So if you're offered questions, and when you book a segment on, let's say a local morning news show, you give them the questions, or they give you the questions that you're going to be answered. If you didn't spend 3 or 4 hours answering those questions, you did yourself and that show a disservice. So when you're afraid of you can't show up, it's exercising that muscle. It's going live every single day on your IG, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, whatever it is, and practicing and getting feedback from people. I'll probably do this to you. I usually do it to everybody. And I'll say afterwards, I'll email you, say, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Can you tell me 3 things that you think I can improve on? Can you give me a critique? How did you think I did? Whatever I want to say, however I'll say it this time. But I literally ask everybody to tell me what I did wrong. Most people don't. Because they don't want, they think they're going to hurt my feelings, or they don't want to tell me or whatever. But I think it's so important to really understand that you need that feedback, because a producer will go to your IG and watch a video of you and be like, she's too small. He's too little, meaning your energy is too small, and they're going to move on. So if you really want to be on those national TV shows, got to do 50 local shows before you get there so you can exercise that muscle, but really spending intentional time doing that rather than just dreaming and wishing about it.
All right. So, I mean, with that, right, you're saying you have to practice to be bigger than life, to be bigger than the screen, to get past the 16:9 ratio, extra large, right? Yes. So I want to kind of talk about your morning routines. I mean, obviously, I know kind of like you start off with a big green energy drink. Then what happens?
Actually, before that, before I get out of bed, I close my eyes, I tell myself a mantra. What I tell myself this morning: everything works out for me. All my clients and collaborators can't work with me, and the success that I crave is the success that I'll earn. That's what I told myself this morning, and I say it 10 times. So whatever your morning thing is, tell yourself it 10 times. And then I quickly got out of bed, got myself, I do hot lemon water, and I went to work out. And I do that at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, so that by the time I get back, I have 2 or 3 hours before I start my day, so that I can have that quiet time. I can see my kids, walk the dog, do laundry, whatever it is. Because once I sit here, I'm here. I'm at home, but I try not to be at home. I try really just to be in the office. But I do have breaks with that throughout the day where I take quiet time. I'll sit outside, or I'll go, I'll sit with my husband and be quiet, because probably like you, I speak all day. I probably talk for 6 hours a day. So I need that break to re-energize myself. But my kids always say to me, Mom, you know what? No matter how tired you are, when that light goes on, you turn on. And it's true, because I've been doing it for so long.
So, I mean, obviously on the front side of it, turning on is all great. But I think on the intellectual side, you have to be pretty studious and know exactly what you're talking about, how to talk about it, why you're talking about it. So I want to talk about the education part of it. Are you an avid reader? Are you an audiobook reader? How are you getting the information? And if it is through books, what books would you like to recommend to the listener?
I'm actually not in a book phase right now. I'm in digital phase, and I go back and forth between that. And when I'm in a book phase, I read fiction, nonfiction. I really don't read a lot of business books, but I read a lot online. I'm in a lot of newsletters, reading Apple News. I like Chalkboard. I like Brew. I'm thinking what else I'd go to for my news. Yahoo Entertainment. Variety Magazine. Like, I need to know what's going on in the business. I read Entrepreneur, Forbes, Bloomberg. So I have like my daily things that I check into, that I look at the highlights, because I want to know that the Tesla CFO left today or yesterday. He resigned, right? I want to know that who was sold to who. I'm thinking what else I read today. But I want to know what's going on in the business side of business. I want to go on in the entertainment business. I want to know what's going on in the food business. So if I'm breathed in those areas, then I can talk to what's going on in the world, and I can kind of get the trends that are happening and not happening. And then I read social media. I see what's going on. I follow the directors of all the platforms, because they come on weekly and tell you what's going on the platforms. They don't tell you the algorithm's changing, unfortunately, but they do tell you the changes they're making and the things that they're doing. But the one thing that I think is really imperative that maybe most people don't do is I'm in a couple networking, women's networking groups, and I read the conversations in each of the platforms. It's just what people are posting every day. And I probably spend 5 to 10 minutes a day reading that, for the pulse of like what people are working on, what people are have questions about, and what they're struggling with.
So, I mean, you're like a database of information, like you're harnessing information on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously kind of like you're a podcaster as well. So it makes it really easy for you to kind of recycle that content based upon who you're interviewing or whatever topic you're talking about. So I want you to talk to the listener right now, whether it's my show or your show. And I want you to kind of utilize that context of all the content that you've been harnessing for a period of time, and give them some words of wisdom and insight, so they can understand that whatever level they want to get to, they can achieve it if they essentially believe it.
Okay. I'm thinking where I want to start. I think it's with figuring out what you want, because I don't have, everyone says like, create your dream. I'm not a big dreamer. I don't have that big dream of I want my own TV show, or I want that big TED talk. Like that's like in my strategy, but it's not a big dream. So I want to take that pressure off of everyone that you need to have this big dream, because let me tell you, when you have that TEDx talk and you're on the other side of it, then what's next? So is your big dream to make an impact? My big dream is to send my kids to college without them having any debt. My big dream is to be able to go on a vacation once a year and be comfortable financially. And my big dream is to help as many people as I can to see themselves. So what's your big dream? And then asking for it. Because I think my words of wisdom come from, you can create your own possibility of success if you tell everybody you've ever effing met about it. Stop holding what you want to have happen in your life to yourself. If you're launching a group program like I am, I want you to tell everybody you met, hey, I'm launching a group program and I want 15 people in it. I want you to get really, really specific, because the more that you put it out there, and I don't care if you are about energy or manifesting or whatever it is, whatever your thing is, but if you start saying what you want, you'll be surprised on how you act according to that to get what you want. The fear kind of goes away, because when you get positive reinforcement, if I say to you, I'm going to get 20 people in my next program, you're going to say, great, that's awesome. Good for you. And then I can believe it more and more. And then I might be less afraid to do the next thing. So if you can cash into or step into that, you create the possibility of your own success by asking for what you want, then I think you can actually make all that stuff happen.
All right. So the listener's listening and you're telling them to ask for what they want. So now you're going to ask them for what you want. How do they get in contact with you? Where do you want to send them?
I want you all to go to my Instagram, like my page, and then download my new lead magnet. It's called Leveraging Your Logos, 5 Expert Strategies, because you probably have a couple logos on your website and all they're doing is collecting dust and they're not making you money. It's time to step it up.
So I'm happy you brought that up, because I mean, I love brands. Like I talk brands all day, every day. So I want you to kind of talk about like that free giveaway. Like what are you staging and what kind of concepts are you delivering, talking about leveraging, monetizing logos that's on someone's website?
It's what do you do with the logos and what you do with the media. I'm really tired of, like I said before, hey, I was on the Today Show and nothing happened. Well, it's all up to you, because getting media is the first part of it. What you do with it is the second part of it. My cocktail book came out a few years ago. I am making money every month from what I do for that cocktail book and how I'm leveraging that I have a published book and then it's out in the world. So what I want to have happen in everyone's business is for them to earn consistent media, have a system that's what I teach my clients, is a consistent media system, then how to subjugate your business so that you can leverage all the visibility that you're getting into your new products, right? So my leverage your logos lead magnet is the first step into my program, which is coming out in October. That's about leveraging your logos, turning your assets into money. If you want more leads, more clients, and more cash in your business, media is the way to get there. It's a lot more fun than doing stupid webinars. It's a lot more fun than, creating 16 different emails to make you X. I think just showing up and talking like this and letting people see who you are and see what your heart's about. And I call my brand of love Jersey love, because I'll tell you what I think, but I'm going to give you a hug while I do it. And that's what it, and that, and it's about resonating, and that's what it's all about.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, I love the fact that you say Jersey love. I mean, obviously, like people that never visit the Northeast, or they've heard about it, like really and truly, if you grew up in New York, you grew up in like, Boston, Jersey, even like Pennsylvania, it's a totally different mentality completely across the board. So I want you to kind of like talk about like, how has that helped you to become so fearless in what you're doing? Because again, you are completely fearless. Like there's no fear when you're doing. So when you talk about
well, actually I got it from Clubhouse. I ended up moderating a couple Clubhouse rooms, or hosting a couple Clubhouse rooms with a couple media people. And I was the coach. When somebody came up with like a problem, I was the business person that connected the media to your business. And as I was coaching people, I just started saying this Jersey love. I'm going to give you, is it okay if I give you some Jersey love? It's almost like, is it okay if I push you?
Yeah.
And everyone would say yes. And then thank me for giving them Jersey love. Which just meant like, I'm not going to give it to you soft. I'm going to tell you what I really think. And I remember I haven't really thought about it like that in a long time, but making people cry. Because they were able to see themselves, see the mistakes they were making, and hope and getting out of their own way. So just by being myself, I was able to see other people, see what they were coming up with. And I would have conversations in Clubhouse. Like, I hear what you're saying, but X, Y, and Z. And I think the reflections that I got in 2020 from doing that, the response I got from people allowed me the space to do it more, because I would get thank yous. I would get videos on social media, on Instagram, thanking me. And these are the changes they made in their business. And I remember I got one, this woman's name was Sally. And she wrote me, she said, 6 months ago, you told me to do this and I did it. And I can't thank you enough, because I know, and like you too, the information in my head can help a lot of people if they would listen to it. And by giving it the Jersey love way, was like, hey, I'm going to tell you what it really is like, but I'm going to support you to get it done. Instead of, you're wrong, you suck, this is BS. That's not how I do it. Lovingly, I'll tell you what the problem is and how to make it better. But I think that that's something that I would love a lot more people to do, is like, this makes me the craziest, is the 6 figures for 6 months. Make 6 figures in 6 months, because, everybody can do that. And now this new thing of master resale rights is like the latest fad, right? And getting people to invest in programs that are not going to get them anywhere. That is all about the what and the why, not the how. So if we actually have the conversation, that honest Jersey love conversation, then we can actually all get somewhere, versus a section of people who are just trying to make money. And honestly, that makes me the saddest, because when in the middle of pandemic, when people would see that, and I'd have conversations on networking events or whatever, Zoom things, and I'd hear women say, hey, I'm going to quit my 6+ figure job and come do what you do. And my response was always, please don't. for these reasons. Are you a marketing guru? Do you know how to sell? Can you create a website? How much money you got to do this? And if you didn't tell me you had a couple of, tens of thousands of dollars, I told you not to do this. Because if you're actually doing this and want to be successful in this, it takes a certain kind of personality to keep going.
Correct. It definitely does. And which kind of leads me to like achievements, right? I mean, obviously, I would think that you're a hell of an overachiever, whether you believe it or not, right? I mean, you achieve things left and right, but I want you to kind of talk about in all the achievements you've had. And if you've had dozens of them, which one is your most significant one that talks to you on a personal level, that talks to you on an emotional level?
Well, my kids are the first.
Okay.
100%. I have a really hard time of my own stuff, of really actualizing my own, success. But I know that what I've been able to accomplish over the last, let's say, 10 years is special. And it's special because I got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
My book was really out of a spark of an idea that I had that I just pushed and didn't stop pushing until it happened. So I would say that the actual getting my book published with, I think at that time I had 2,500 people following me on Instagram. And probably the same, I didn't have a big social media following. And at that time it was very big about social media. So I know that being in those rooms with those publishers and selling them the idea, enrolling them the idea was all because of what came out of my heart and what came out of my mouth.
And also, you probably got to give some credit to Spike as well, too, because it sounds like that kind of came on a journey as well, right?
Yeah, Spike and I have been on a definite journey together. You're very sweet.
All right, so I got this last question for you, right? Going into transition is, if you had an opportunity to spend 24 hours with anyone, and this person could be someone that you never met, that's dead from historical past, or someone that's alive today that you haven't met, who would you want to spend those 24 hours with and why?
I would want to, what came up, I don't know why it came up, is the producers of Friends, Bunham and Murray. I don't remember which one has passed, but one of them has. I have a TV development idea. I really do. I have an idea I kind of been working on a little bit for the last couple of years. And I think having 24 hours with somebody like that would not only support that, but I think that learning how they created the #1 show of all time. And they've created, they've created every show. They're all over the map of the top shows. But understanding from their personal place how they had the perseverance and determination and confidence in their creativity to actually do all the things they were able to do, because I think that's what I could use to get to the next level too.
Wow, definitely insightful. So going into closing of the podcast, and I think you'll get a kick out of this because you're a fellow podcaster. So I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of my show, and I become their guest. So now the Boss Uncaged is yours, and I'm your guest. What questions do you have for me?
I'm really impressed with all of the research that you did. I would love for you to talk a little bit about, do you have a system, how you do it, and why is it so important for you to really understand your guest?
I think this is the first time somebody's actually asked me how I do it, because a lot of times they're kind of like, how am I holding all this content in my brain? So the process that I do leverages from the intake form. And that's why I made the form a requirement. If someone does not fill out the form, I'm not going to interview them, because that form becomes a multiple gateway to who they are. They'll give me access to their Instagram account, their YouTube account, their Facebook account, versus in the early days, I would spend time trying to find those accounts. And then I didn't have enough time to then research who that person was, because I just found their account. I would put that link in the show notes. But now that I'm requiring it, it gives me an opportunity to kind of deep dive and go through some content and look at Instagram, or go to the first post, or see something that's creative, or, like the reason why I even found out about Spike was because of your Facebook profile. And it was like, you had a description, you talked about your kids, you talked about your husband and Spike. And the other reason why I knew Spike existed was with another video on Instagram, and I heard a dog barking in the background. And I was like, I don't see any information about the damn dog. Where's the dog? What's his name? So I kept on looking, and then boom, there it was. Because again, I went looking for it. Right. So that's part of my process. And then the other part of it is leveraging something called Memory Palace. So putting just bits of information in places relative to where I'm at or a location, so I can kind of harness what I see when I walk into your living room is you holding the dog, holding a green drink, and two kids. And that's how I kind of memorized it. So when I'm bringing them up in conversation, I'm like, okay, she's with the two kids. Now we're going to talk about the kids. Okay, the green drink. Let's talk about breakfast. So the different cues are all coming up in our conversation, and you're giving me the cues based upon your answers.
I love that. I really appreciate it because a good podcast host can kill a show or make a show big successful. And I think that you having those bits of information also allows me to be more vulnerable because I'm like, hey, he knows who I am. He knows what I'm about. And also respect that you've taken the time to even look into who I am. Because I think, as you know, and I don't know if a lot of our listeners know, but most podcast hosts do nothing but look at your bio and they move on. Some people do a pre-interview, which I always find a little annoying because it's like, I don't have time to sit with you twice.
Yep.
But I think that having that information, it's impressive. And I hope that you know that you show up at a higher level when you do that too.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. It kind of just goes back into like the definition of my name means to listen. And that's how it started, was for me getting the compliment of I'm a really good listener. And I was like, how do I amplify this listening? And that's when I started realizing I can amplify the listening by being more diligent with my research and then holding that information and being able to regurgitate it on the whim, on the fly. And once I figured that out, I was like, well, nobody else is really doing it. So it gives me opportunity not only to stand out, but to also give the respect to the person that I'm interviewing. And it also feels like we're friends. Like I know you, I could go walk your dog right now because I'm like, come on, and give me some ideas. And it's genuine, you know?
Yes, I appreciate that. I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna do it for my client, for my new podcast clients too, or my guest as well. I really appreciate your time today. This has been really fun.
Well, I appreciate you, and I think you definitely lived up to being the unforgettable boss. And kind of like I hear Nat King Cole in the background singing Unforgettable over and over again, and that's the way I'm going to envision you from now on. So
I love it. Thank you.